Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I hope you're having a good holiday season so far. We are in week 2 of Advent, and we're using a resource called Starry Nights, which gives us all kinds of cool, interesting facts about our galaxy and stars and solar systems and all that stuff. And I'll be sharing a lot of that with you today because it actually turns out to be helpful and relevant, I think. In fact, let's just jump right into it. So you have probably seen models of our solar system. Maybe you made one as a kid for a class where you have the sun in the center and then you have different things going out to show all of the planets in our solar system. And if we were a coin, if planet Earth was a coin, we would not be the sad dime, even though it's worth 10 cents. It's much smaller than the actual penny. And it's not nearly as big as the nickel that you can see here. And forget about the quarter, that's saved for much bigger planets. And forget about the sun. Maybe this whole dollar is silver dollar is the sun. I don't know. Planet Earth, probably using these images, is probably more like the size of a penny. And that's a helpful thing to keep in mind in terms of our solar system and our scale and our size. And our solar system's pretty big. It takes a while to travel from one part of it to another. And we are a part of the Milky Way galaxy, which I'll talk about in a little while. In the Milky Way galaxy, which is what we see when we look out at a clear night with the naked eye, we are able to see constellations. And one of those constellations I bet you've seen before is Orion. Orion's belt is really recognizable. It's those 3 stars just in a real distinct line order. And if you go up as we're looking at it, look up to the left, the shoulder, it would be the right shoulder of Orion, but as we're looking at it, it's left. That star is the brightest and probably the biggest thing that we can see with the naked eye in our galaxy. And that star in the Orion constellation has a name. And the name of that star is Betelgeuse. It's not spelled like the movie, but it's pronounced the same way, Betelgeuse, which is kind of a cool thing. Well, the Betelgeuse star is massive, and if, just for state of comparison, if the sun were the size of a billiard ball, this is a stress ball, but it's basically the same size as a billiard ball. If the sun were the size of a billiard ball, Betelgeuse would be the size of an apartment building. Doesn't that just blow your mind? The scale of things. So this massive star, which for us, is similar to this, if even that, I think the sun is probably 3 times bigger in this comparison, with the penny being the Earth. Just imagine how massive this star Betelgeuse must be. I find it kind of cool that people in antiquity, especially in the northern hemisphere, and people, the Abrahamic faith pioneers before us, they all looked at the same stars that we are. They saw Orion's belt. They saw the Big Dipper. They saw the North Star. They looked at the Milky Way, just like we do on a given night. And I bet that as they did, they were humbled by the magnitude of it all. And it made them probably feel kind of small, but maybe in a good way. Gave them perspective on the size of our life and what matters and what doesn't and all those kinds of things. That's the kind of stuff we're looking at today. Now we're going to jump into a character in the story of Jesus' birth, which was a story. Remember that Matthew and Luke are the only ones that give us any kind of a birth narrative, and they don't necessarily align. In fact, they don't align. There are irreconcilable differences between the details of the story, and that's okay. Our point is not to take a Western mindset and try to find out with specificity exactly where they were and when did it all happen and how big was the star that the wise men followed, all that. That's not what we're supposed to do with this story. We're supposed to read the story and glean from it what we think the authors really want us to see. And today's is no exception as we look at the character of Joseph. So this is the story of Joseph according to Matthew 1, verses 18 to 25, and this is from the Message translation. The birth of Jesus took place like this. His mother, Mary, was engaged to be married to Joseph. Before they enjoyed their wedding night, Joseph discovered she was pregnant. It was by the Holy Spirit, but he didn't know that. Joseph, chagrined but noble, determined to take care of things quietly, so Mary would not be disgraced. While he was trying to figure out a way out, he had a dream. God's angel spoke in the dream, "Joseph, son of David, don't hesitate to get married. Mary's pregnancy is spirit conceived. God's Holy Spirit has made her pregnant. She will bring a son to birth, and when she does, you, Joseph, will name him Jesus, God saves, because he will save his people from their sins." This would bring the prophet's embryonic revelation to full term. Clever work there, Eugene Peterson. This is a quote from Isaiah. "Watch for this. A virgin will get pregnant and bear a son. They will name him Emmanuel," which is Hebrew for God with us. Now, just a quick nerd note on this. That prophecy that comes out of Isaiah's earlier chapters was not about this time that we're looking at with Joseph, but it was about a very specific time, and it wasn't really talking about necessarily a specific woman. It was mainly saying to the king at that time, through the prophet, things are going to change within 9 months. A woman's going to get pregnant, and you're terrified about these horrible situations that you're facing, and they're all going to melt away within a short order. So that's the context. But Matthew's authorship borrowed from that story to shine a light on this Jesus who was coming into our midst. So then after this, Joseph woke up. He did exactly what God's angel commanded in the dream. He married Mary, but he did not consummate the marriage until she had the baby. And he named the baby Jesus. Well, today's the second Sunday in Advent, and this is supposed to be the week where we talk about peace. And I got to tell you, Joseph certainly did not experience peace in his story. Right away, whatever dreams he had, which were probably not very lofty. He was a day laborer in his day. He was a carpenter, but that's not the kind of thing we think about like a finished carpenter today. This is more like guys hanging out at Home Depot hoping for work for the day. That's what I want you to think about when you think about Joseph. And so his ambition, his aspirations for life were probably very limited to his social class, his poverty. His dreams were like, hey, can I make it through life? Am I going to be able to provide for a potential family someday? Those were the things on his mind. The ideas of much grandeur beyond that just weren't there. So what few things he did have to hope for? He had an arranged marriage, probably, with this young girl, Mary. Probably was arranged, years before. We don't know how long ago, but that's how most things were done back then. And he's planning on this. He's saving up money to be able to afford to actually make this marriage happen. And as it's coming along, he finds out that she's pregnant. And some kind of story comes out of her mouth about God, whatever. And anyway, she's pregnant. What is he going to do with this? I mean, just imagine that for poor Joseph. That's anything but peace. That's chaos. That's trauma. That's turmoil. I mean, what is that doing to his life's dreams, even if they were subdued by our standards? I mean, still, now he's got this one dream of this potential marriage is gone. He's got this public humiliation thing going on. It's got the community's talking. His parents are talking. Her parents are talking. He's right there in the center of it. He didn't choose any of this. This was just thrown at him, and he has to deal with it. That's not peace at all. But right away, in just a few verses, we see that there's something about Joseph's character that was pretty noble. He had the right in his time to really make a big deal out of this and publicly shame Mary. Maybe even bring her up on charges, and in extreme cases, maybe even get her stoned. I mean, we don't know how often that happened, but it was possible by Jewish law. But he didn't choose to do that. He chose to cut ties. He couldn't get on board with this cockamamie story about, God somehow making her pregnant without the normal means. So he couldn't ride with that, didn't want to ride forward with all of that nonsense and mess as he understood it at that time. But he chose not to make matters worse, which is an act of peace in a way. He chose to calm down and say, look, enough is enough. We don't need to make this awful situation any worse. So he decided to divorce her quietly. But then he has this dream. The guy can't even get a break when he's asleep. He's looking for some peace and quiet, as he's falling off to sleep. And instead, he gets this crazy dream where, and they took their dreams very seriously, especially this kind, where this angel comes and says, hey, what you've heard from her is true. And you need to get on board with this. And when you name this kid, you can't even name him after yourself. You have to name him somebody else, because he would have named him Joseph Jr., or in our vernacular. Instead, you got to name him Yeshua, which is the same as the Hebrew Joshua, which is Jesus, which translates the Lord saves. Now, this saves is an interesting word. Salvation, saves. It is less to do with forgiveness of sins and getting to heaven. It has everything to do with being made well and whole. Well and whole. So wellness and wholeness is what we're talking about here. And that is what this Jesus came to bring. And so he wakes up from the dream, and you got to wonder, how long did he process this? Did he sit with this for a few days before he goes to Mary and says, hey, we're going to go a different direction here? I don't know what happened to Joseph, but something transpired. Something shifted him. And I wonder if it had everything to do with a perspective shift. Like he experienced, we talk about stargazing and how that perspective can change our view on things. Well, he was looking up to the heavens, and an angel from the heavens came and talked to him. And it had to have changed the way he thought about things. And as far as we know, he was a good dude. He seemed to be a good husband to Mary. He seemed to honor her. They ended up having more kids after Jesus. He seemed to protect her and want to guard for her life. And he seemed to be able to provide for the family until he presumably died at some point. And because Jesus turned out to be a pretty good guy, and as far as we can tell, so did his siblings, that says something about Joseph. I mean, think about it. He could have walked around with a chip on his shoulder every day for the rest of his life if he wanted to. I can't believe I got the short end of the straw on this one, and I'm so angry with how all this happened, and I don't even know what was going on, and I've had to suffer this and that, and poor me, he's a real martyr, for doing this job. But he didn't do that. Somewhere along the way, he must have shifted his perspective in the pursuit of peace, and I think he found it. I think the fruit of his life suggests that he found peace, even though he absolutely went through some hell and had to deal with all of that stuff. I have a feeling that when he started to consider the heavens and what the heavenly voice was saying to him, he was like, wow, life is a lot bigger than just me. It doesn't mean that his pain is not real, the struggle is not real, but life is really big. And what do I really want to be about? And how small are my troubles in light of the magnitude of everything? And life is too short to be having the negative energy of my unforgiveness, my chaos, my unpeace. I just want to get rid of that. And I think he did. And we're not sure exactly all the things that went into it, but I think it's interesting that maybe he was the very first person, maybe after Mary, who we'll talk about in a couple weeks, but maybe he was the very first person after Mary to experience the very salvation, the wellness and the wholeness that this kid was born to bring. It's interesting. Well, hey, how about some more stuff about the stars? When we look up at the night sky, as you can see in this image, we see the Milky Way. If you've ever been in a dark park, there are a few national parks that are dark parks. You can look up, and it is amazing what you see when all of the light in the surrounding area is gone. Pinnacles National Monument, just south of, just around Hollister area in California, is a dark park, and it's extraordinary. If you go up to the mountains and you're lucky enough to be on an island in Union Reservoir, it's really dark, and so you can see the salt shakers work, on the galaxy and in the stars that you see, and it's extraordinary. Well, the reason we call it the Milky Way is because that's what we see. It looks like this band of stars. And the easiest way to explain it, and your Advent little handout thing helps explain this. Imagine that we're on a frisbee, which is our galaxy, and we're just a little bit off center, and we're looking flat against the frisbee. Well, all those stars mashed together are what we are seeing when we see this band that we call the Milky Way. The density of starlight is what we're actually seeing. And until the last 100 years, that is what we thought the known universe was. And this Milky Way galaxy is massive. It's about 125,000, takes light about 125,000 years to go from one side of the Milky Way to the other. So 125,000 light years across. I mean, that's sizable. It's massive. And I got a couple more images just to help you know how big the Milky Way is and how teeny tiny we are. In this image, you can see a snapshot of the Milky Way galaxy. And you can see this arrow saying, you are here. We're like a speck of dust in the Milky Way galaxy. We're like nothing. If you wanted to have an idea about scale, again, about the size of our solar system, just our solar system, and light of the Milky Way galaxy, I return again to a coin. And let's give ourselves some credit. Let's say that this coin, which is a silver dollar, this coin represents our entire solar system. So no longer just the sun, but our entire solar system. The sun, our sun, and all the planets. So as you'll see on this graphic, if you placed this coin on your finger and you walked to Denver, Colorado, and if the Milky Way was the size of the continental United States, we would be the size of this coin located in Denver, Colorado. And the lights that we see that we call the Milky Way would simply be the urban lights of the city of Denver. That's what we're talking about when we talk about scale. This is how small we are just in our galaxy. That's nuts. That kind of stuff just blows my mind. Pete Enns, who's a well-known biblical scholar, and we follow his work here, he talks about how the universe terrifies him in its magnitude. And we'll learn more about that. You know, in this whole peace thing, I think we're all Joseph in one way or another. I think we all have our hurts, our wounds that we pick up along the way. And what we do with them results in peace or not, more or less peace. We all have things that have been done to us that we hold grudges on, and we have a hard time letting them go. And I in no way mean to minimize the pain that we've gone through, because pain is pain, and it's really hard work. It's hard stuff to deal with, to live with. And some of you have experienced things where you're absolutely victimized at very young ages, unconscionable things, awful things that are really hard for you to think about forgiving. But forgiving doesn't mean injustice. Forgiving doesn't mean letting off the hook. Forgiving means reframing. Forgiving means letting yourself away off of the burden of the pain. It's like freeing yourself from the pain of that person and that trauma's effect on you in certain ways. And that happens to us large and small, from grudge things about a coworker to family systems dynamic to, global issues. We all carry this stuff. And the question is, what are we going to do with it when peace is right there? When Jesus, the one who came to bring this salvation, which includes this well-being, this wholeness, this shalom kind of peace, what are we going to do with that? Because it's available to us. And I wonder if perspective helps on that. I wonder if today, when we look up to the heavens and we see the galaxy, the Milky Way, and we realize how teeny tiny we are, I wonder if that can in some way put into perspective our own stuff. And again, not to deny it, not to minimize it, but just to hold it in perspective and just say to ourselves, the things we've been through have been really, really hard, but life is massive. And do I want to, in any way, sacrifice my quality of life because of something so small on something so small? And maybe because of the brevity of life and light of the expanse of all of life, maybe we say to ourselves, man, life is too short for me to hold on to this stuff anymore, to let it destroy my peace. There was an author named Lewis Smedes who wrote a book called Forgive and Forget. And he talked about forgiveness, and he said it's like when we forgive somebody, we set a prisoner free and then discover that we were the ones in chains. There's some real truth to that. That when we choose to forgive and let go, which is not a statement of saying it's okay what you did, but it is a release of us from holding anything over on someone else. It gives up that burden, that energetic suck of having to hold something over someone else. It robs us of life. And when we choose to forgive, when we choose to invite this peace, which is found in forgiveness, we find out that we are the ones who are freed up. But it's not just us. We also free the relationship. When we choose to hold on to things and hold over the wrongs that have been done to us in the relationship, whatever kind of relationship that is, we put a cap on that relationship. It can only go so far. Love can only be experienced so much because we have built a wall. Love requires vulnerability. Depth of relationship requires vulnerability. And when we put up a wall which restricts that vulnerability, it just can't go very far or very deep. I've been on both sides of this. I've been in a place where I didn't want to offer forgiveness and withheld it and kind of purposely held it over some people in my life who wronged me, who hurt me. It was an empowering thing for me. It kind of made me feel better than them. And honestly, as Richard Rohr speaks in some of his work, it kind of does something dark and weird for our ego. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of like inflicting a little bit more pain on them, which is weird and not who I want to be. But we do that when we withhold forgiveness. We put ourselves up on a pedestal. And as long as we hold on to that unforgiveness on that other person, we kind of put ourselves above them. And that's not good. It kills relationships, or at least limits them. And it's not good for us. And it's not good for them either. I've been on the other side where I've experienced unforgiveness from people that I've wronged. And I've known that I've wronged them. And I've tried to express my sorrow and what I've done that has caused pain. And at different times in my life, I've had some of those people not give forgiveness. And it just keeps the wound there. It doesn't allow any healing. There is no well-being beyond a certain, very surface amount. And there's no wellness. There's no wholeness with it. We just walk around with this unhealed wound, with no hope of healing. We can be a party to that if we want, and it's very common, it's very human, and I don't blame you if you do. It's the human experience. We do the best we can. But there's something more. And I think Joseph found it. And I think he found it in part because of the heavens and because of perspective of like, man, life is really big. These are my problems in light of all of this, not to minimize again, but then also to say life is too short. Life is too short to be robbed of shalom when the one who is with us to bring it to us is offering it at every turn. It's hard. There are resources for this, by the way. There's tons of books on this. Brene Brown's done a lot of great work. Richard Rohr's done a lot of great work on this. Therapy helps. Please get therapy if you're stuck. You can talk to me about stuff. I can help you to a certain degree. Just be a listening ear, maybe help shift your perspective. I'm trained in that kind of stuff. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I don't pretend to be. And if I help you recognize that you need one, I'll help you find one. But please consider your life and the lives of others that you empower and affect, that you can pursue peace or not. It's hard, but life's short. We don't want to miss out. Well, there's more. And just to make you feel even a little smaller and also big at the same time, I have this video to show you. Up until about 100 years ago, scientists thought that the Milky Way galaxy was it. Like that was all of creation spinning around, which is pretty good that they were able to figure out that much, and they figured out a lot. But then the Hubble telescope was invented and put into use, and we discovered that the Milky Way galaxy itself is just one of many galaxies in the expanding universe. And when I mean many galaxies, I mean many galaxies. Scientists believe that the Milky Way galaxy is one of potentially trillions of galaxies in our expanding universe. So remember when we felt like we were a speck within the Milky Way galaxy? Well, it turns out that the Milky Way galaxy itself is barely a speck in the overwhelming, continually expanding universe, which just, again, calls us to keep everything in perspective. Enjoy the video, and then I got another quote for you, and we're almost done. So I mentioned that Richard Rohr's done some helpful work with this stuff. In a recent meditation post, he talks about doing this work, this seeking of deeper spirituality and growth. And he was talking about it in terms of science and stuff, and how we need to kind of take the scientific method to our faith and keep growing deeper and deeper. Well, in this, he says to us this, which I think is relevant for the overall conversation we're having today. He says, God comes into the world in always surprising ways so that the sincere seeker will always find evidence for God. Is sincere seeking perhaps the real meaning of walking in faith? The search for truth, the search for authentic love, and the search for God are finally the same search. I would rather have one who lays down one's life for a friend, that's Jesus speaking in John 15:13, by sincere seeking, demanding scholarship and authentic service than those who are on no search, do no moral or emotional work, and have no open heart for the world, but just want to personally go to heaven. We have coddled this individualistic non-Christianity for far too long, and with no encouragement from Jesus whatsoever. What powerful words from Richard Rohr. And related to our conversation today, I think it is incredibly appropriate and spot on. We have the capacity to live our whole lives without doing the hard work of emotional investigation, of doing the healing, doing the forgiving, which leads toward the peace, which leads toward the wellness, which leads toward the wholeness, the well-being, the shalominess that we talk about, this deep and abiding love that permeates and changes our lives. That takes work. But if we settle on just settling for whatever the status quo may be, we are robbing ourselves. And I want to say that that is not faith at all. That perhaps what you are being invited into is what faith requires of us, that leads to life, an abundance of life, as Jesus said. But to do the opposite is basically snubbing God. It's saying to God, "Oh, thank you very much for this offer of a much more abundant and fulfilling life, but I'm going to choose to hold on to my grudges. I'm going to choose non-peace, non-forgiveness, because I'm just too stubborn to do anything else, or I'm too hurt, or I'm too wounded, or I'm too raw, or whatever the case may be." And again, not to minimize anything that we have gone through, but just to suggest that there is more, and the more is beautiful, and the more is going to lead to a richer, more peaceful, more loving, more whole, more well life. Why wouldn't we want that? I have seen this in my long ministry. I've been in ministry almost 30 years, and I have seen this go both ways. I've seen examples of people who went to their grave bitter, angry, frustrated. You wouldn't have to be around them 5 minutes to pick up on it. They had attitude wherever they went. They get grumpy in a snap. I mean, just crazy. And just like, man, life is too big and life is too short to settle for that. And then I've come across people who have been through hell, been through sometimes worse hell than the people that, somehow came around and got through it. But these people, as they approach their sunset, they are filled with love and grace and joy and an outlook on life that is optimistic and beautiful and inspiring. I want that. I want that. Because life is too big and life is too short to settle for anything less. I think it's kind of related to that the Apostle Paul, who had to do his own very, very hard work when he figured out he was completely wrong in his understanding of things, he says this to the Philippian church. "So this is my prayer, that your love will flourish and that you will not only love much, but well. Learn to love appropriately. You need to use your head and test your feelings so that your love is sincere and intelligent, not sentimental gush. Live a lover's life, circumspect and exemplary, a life Jesus will be proud of, bountiful in fruits from the soul." I love that. To another audience, the church at Thessaloniki, we call it the letter to the the letter to the Thessalonians. He writes this: "May God himself, the God who makes everything holy, which is well, and whole, make you holy, well, and whole, put you together, spirit, soul, and body, and keep you fit for the coming of Christ." Will you join me in prayer? And then after we pray, I'd like us to say this benediction that Paul gave the Thessalonians out loud together. But first, let's take a moment in prayer. God, help us consider the heavens above us. magnitude, the majesty of an expanding universe. Help us respect its size and our place in it. May it bring our struggles into perspective in a healthy way, not as a denial or minimizing or blowing off, but just perspective. And may the brevity of our lives, in light of the light years it takes for the light of those stars that we enjoy to reach us, may we not settle. May we not settle for the unpeace that unforgiveness brings, for not dealing with our stuff and our pain and our agony. May we realize that we have an opportunity to do something about it, which we can assume that Joseph did, which we know others have that we know throughout history and even in our own lifetime. May we have the courage to be honest with ourselves about the pain we are holding and the pain we are holding over others. May we seek healing with your strength and your grace, that we might be free of all the unpeace that has held us so long, that we might begin to live the life that you have opened up for us and have taught us and instructed us through the person of Jesus. May we be inspired to live into the benediction that Paul gave us. Now, if you would open your eyes and read along with me. May God himself, the God who makes everything holy, well, and whole, make you holy, well, and whole. Put you together, spirit, soul, and body, and keep you fit for the coming of Christ. Because, my friends, the coming of Christ is constant. Christ is always with us and always coming, always with us, inviting us to a new depth of shalom at every turn in our lives. May you say yes to that opportunity, as hard as it may be.